How did the series come about?
Well, it was the idea of Jennifer Davis, who of course wrote the books at the end of the series. She has a great love of the countryside and of history, and she put it together and she argued for years that such a thing would make a good series. But, you know, it's not easy to convince the powers that be. And eventually she won. Enough for half an hour of one programme. And it built and it built, and thanks to the skills of the production team, it finished up as a series of 13 half hours.
Was it very tricky finding that particular walled garden?
Yes. Jennifer went to more than 20. I think she hunted out references to more than 50. She took me to over 10, and then suddenly she rang up and said, "Problem solved. We found the garden and we found the head gardener." And it was just remarkable. She got a lead on that place and that man. And he was Harry Dodson.
Did she know exactly what she was looking for when she set out on that quest?
I think she had a very, very good idea of what she was looking for. But we never expected to have so much skill, technique, knowledge in one person, and that person comfortably operating in their own backyard. Because, you know, Harry Dodson lives, and it's totally genuine. That is his patch.
Manna from heaven. Really.
Well, absolutely, and such a wonderful sense of authenticity.
What were some of your favourite aspects of the Victorian Kitchen Garden?
I think the favourite thing was the accuracy, the authenticity, the effort that was made for the thing to feel right, to be right. And I could go into those gardens, and of course, you know, I may not look it, but I'm not really a Victorian. It did seem just as I had known it as a small child from my head gardener father's own work. Now, of course, he was doing it at the end 40 years after that era had passed, but nevertheless, there was still that feel of it. You know, you could go into those glass houses and you could smell the humidity, the air, and you'd feel, yep, this is right. This is not a film set. Those lights, that camera, those people standing there with their clipboards, you know, they're just invited in, but the real thing is here. And it'll be here tomorrow, because Harry will be watering it tomorrow. And that's what, you know, it wasn't tidied away at the end and wrapped up.
Well, it looked like a real working vegetable garden.
Oh, it was, and I mean, people were taking produce home, you know. The camera crew had never been better fed. All that fresh produce.
Tell me why the Victorian era was the era of in the craft of gardening.
Well, it was a slow build-up for the best part of 300 years, if you look into the history of the thing, and things getting better all the time. And then that climax of the last half of the 19th century was really due to the enthusiasm of the owners, the enthusiasm of the aristocracy in this country. They were really the patrons of that subject, you know, because they allowed head gardeners to do an awful lot of things that were really beyond what the kitchen wanted and beyond what the big house decoration wanted.
Like what, for instance?
Well, growing huge numbers of varieties of apples, probably 100 different varieties of apple, when really they probably needed 10, to be able to supply the Ruth Mott of their day with all the dessert apples and all the cooking apples that she needed. They would grow lots more decorative plants in their glass houses than they would ever use in the decoration of the big house. But you've got to remember that the owner would make fairly frequent visits to those gardens for the pleasure. I mean, it was his hobby, and in some cases her hobby, I have to say. It was the hobby of the aristocrats as much as the almost obsessive pursuit of the head gardeners.
Going back to the produce that Harry grew, where did he get a lot of the, I was about to say stock.
Yes,
where did he get,
yes.
Where did he get it from? Because, I mean, you had quite a lot of produce that was old.
Well, it was, as we say, period correct. And great efforts were made to get that period correct stuff. There's some in the trade still, a lot from private collections and from really research stations that have what are known as gene banks, which is where you store up all these old types in case they could be used in plant breeding. So it was a mixture of, but it was a huge challenge searching it out. And that was a job that Jenny took on. Again, this is Jennifer